and inshallah become people who are Ahlul Qur'an, the people of Allah and His special servants. So I've just been told I need to fill up 10 minutes inshallah. So I think let's have a Q&A. Now I'm sure many of you will have questions maybe about how to study the Qur'an, how to engage with the Qur'an, in particular when it comes to the youth and the children, how to engage with the Qur'an. So if there are any questions inshallah ta'ala, we can now discuss this. So anything, even from the youngsters, or the elders, inshallah. Salam. Jazakallah khairah.
The translations, like you said, the names for particular.
So there are three. The first one I mentioned, which is quite comprehensive, is Mufti Muhammad Taqi Uthmani's The Noble Qur'an with explanatory notes. The Noble Qur'an with explanatory notes. The second one, which is more suitable for non-Muslims, I would say, is the Qur'an, a new translation, and is published by Oxford World Classics. The author is Professor M.A.S. Abdul Halim. May Allah preserve him. And the final is The Clear Qur'an by Dr. Mustafa Khattab. And there's actually two The Clear Qur'an, so make sure we get the right one. It's the one by Dr. Mustafa Khattab, and this is also a very beneficial translation of the Qur'an. Any other questions, inshallah? Yes, brother. Memorizing the Qur'an. Now, memorizing the Qur'an, in my opinion, there is not any one way of memorizing the Qur'an. Every person is different. I myself went through various stages when memorizing the Qur'an, trying different methods. Some people, there's actually an educational model known as the 𝒃𝒂𝒎𝒆𝒅 model, which categorizes learners into 4 categories: visual, audio, kinetic. So everyone learns in a different way. Some people are visual learners. Some people, they learn by listening. Some people learn by writing. So you as a person need to experiment, inshallah, about how you learn best. And remember that when it comes to memorizing the Qur'an, and this is a key point, is that it's not obligatory and fard for you to become a Hafiz al-Qur'an. What is obligatory is for a person to retain what they have memorized. So even if you're not able to memorize the whole Qur'an, but you're able to memorize a few juz, you should keep practicing those few juz and ensure they stay strong in the heart, inshallah. So the best way is, of course, you need to find a teacher first. Inshallah, go to your local imam, find a teacher, someone to recite to, and through experimentation, you'll find your way. In fact, my own journey memorizing the Qur'an, it took me about 3.5 to 4 years. But the first 3 years, I was very slow. I hadn't found my correct method of memorization. I was only doing about 6 juz a year or so. Then when I reached juz 20, I kind of then found the way I needed to memorize. And in the next 5 months, I finished 10 juz. But before that, it took me 3 years to do the first 20. I did the rest in about 4 or 5 months, because I found what works for me. So some people it takes longer, some people they're able to find it quicker. But the quicker you find your way of learning, the quicker you'll be able to memorize, inshallah. Is there any other questions? Yes. Go on, brother. Yes, I do actually. So Qur'an reciters. Now, when it comes to Qur'an reciters, I'm quite critical, particularly when it comes to the tajweed, because there are many reciters out there who may sound beautiful. You know, when we grew up, we heard these reciters in the haram. But when you look at them from a pure tajweed angle, they have many shortcomings. Some of the most famous names, in fact, I wouldn't say they have great tajweed. So for someone who's aiming to excel in the Qur'an and really become an expert reciter, you need to listen to the true mutqineen, the true experts. And I'll give you 2 names, inshallah. Number 1, Sheikh Mahmud Khalil al-Husari from Egypt. A great reciter of the Qur'an. His adah, his enunciation is very clear and crystal clear. In fact, my own children, when I put them to bed, I have a Qur'an cube and I only let them listen to Sheikh Husari, because I want them to pick up from a young age that form of pronunciation, Sheikh Husari. And the second is Sheikh al-Minshawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, which is the Sheikh that our beloved Qari Yahya imitated today. And if that was the imitation, how beautiful it was, imagine how beautiful the original was. Sheikh Minshawi. Sheikh Minshawi actually has these very useful tapes for children where he recites and then the children recite after him. So he'll recite عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ, and then children will recite. And you can actually repeat along with him, which is a very beneficial way of children memorizing the last ajza of the Qur'an. So these are the 2 names, both from Egypt. Sheikh Mahmud Khalil al-Husari, Sheikh al-Husari, and Sheikh Al-Minshawi. You can type them on YouTube, you'll find them all over. You'll find the whole Mus'haf, the whole Qur'an playlist of both of these Qurra on YouTube. They are the best to listen to for excellence in recitation of the Qur'an. Barakallahu feek. Any other questions? Any of the youngsters?
How come during these times, how can we make sure our children are sort of love the Quran and sort of engage more with it, especially young children, like young teenagers?
Good question. Now, I am a firm believer in not forcing people to engage with the Quran, particularly children. Because I've talked to a lot of people from the older generation who say that their experience with the Quran when they were younger with certain institutes and places actually pushed them away from the Qur'an because they associated the Qur'an with things that are not so nice, beatings and things along those lines. Back in the days, alhamdulillah, it doesn't happen now. But that creates a mental block to the Qur'an. So we don't want to be forcing our children to the Qur'an. Rather, we want to be inculcating the love of the Qur'an from a young age. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says in the Qur'an. Allah talks about the Qur'an and studying the book. He says, وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تُعَلِّمُونَ الْكِتَابَ وَبِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَدْرُسُونَ. Allah says, rather become cultivated. رَبَّانِيِّينَ. Rabbaniyin comes from the original word tarbiyah. And Al-Raghib Al-Isfahani, who is a famous scholar who compiled a Quranic lexicon, Al-Mufradat fi Gharib al-Quran, he defines tarbiyah as insha'u shay'i halan fahalan ila hadd al-tamam, growing an object stage by stage until it reaches a state of perfection. And I usually give the example of a plant. If you plant a seed in a pot and you want it to grow in a good manner, what do you need to do? You need to give it the right conditions. You can't smack the plant and expect it to grow. You need to give it fertile soil. You need to give it water. You need to give it sunlight. You need to give it care, attention. You need to prune it. If you do all of this, you give it a lot of care and attention and love, it will grow so beautifully. In fact, there's even been studies done in universities where they had two plants, and one plant, they were intentionally mean to it. They would say mean words to the plant and look at it with an angry face. And another plant, they took care of it. They used to say kind words to the plant. They used to look at it with smiles. And they found that that plant, they had a positive attitude towards, grew up to be a beautiful plant. And that plant, they had a negative attitude towards, grew wonky and it wasn't growing properly. So if that's the state of a plant, imagine the state of our children. We shouldn't be forcing them and making them hate the Qur'an because we're so strict and we're taking away their privileges because of the Qur'an. No, we need to inculcate the love of the Qur'an in our children. And that starts from before even the child is born, when they are in the womb of the mother, to recite the Qur'an, the mother to recite the Qur'an, to play the Qur'an. The sound travels. Then when they are born, people, when they put their children to sleep, they sometimes put these cartoons on, Umar and Hannah, and these other cartoons, I don't know which ones are out there now, nursery rhymes and songs and lullabies. You can easily achieve the same effect through the Qur'an. And as I mentioned, one of my best investments I ever made was this Qur'an cube I bought. I'm not being paid to advertise them, but just genuinely, in terms of my own children, I invested in this Qur'an cube and I play Sheikh Husari to them, and every night they go to sleep listening to that. And now my daughter, who's only not even 2 years old, is starting repeating words already. I haven't taught her anything yet, just listening to that. So it's inculcating that love of the Qur'an from the young age. Teach it, sit there, say alif, ba, ta, tha, reward them when they do it. From when they're small, 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. And they will be able to achieve a lot. I have a relative, she memorized the Qur'an at 9 years old in London. Going to a normal state school, at 9 years old she memorized the Qur'an. And I asked her mother, how did you do it? And she said, from the young age, 1, 2 years old, they were doing all of these things. Making them sleep to the Qur'an, teaching them the Qur'an, even learning one surah, reward them. And when they don't know it, don't say, you're not going to play until you learn your Qur'an. No, say, okay, work with them. Okay, if you do this, we'll give you this. So you're motivating them, not putting them off. This is very, very important when it comes to our children. Remember, love always trumps hate. We make them love the Qur'an, they'll want to do it themselves. They'll reach a stage when they get the age of 8, 9, 10, where they will say to you, Baba, I want to memorize the Qur'an. I want to learn more sabaq. I want to memorize the Qur'an. I want to recite like this Sheikh and that Sheikh. You know, our Sheikh Yahya, hafidhahullah, again, mashallah, I listened to a podcast recently where he was talking about how from young he was listening to the great qurra of the Qur'an and trying to imitate them. And, you know, and that's how he built love for the Qur'an. So similarly in our homes, have the Qur'an always playing. Make the qurra our children's role model. Don't make them want to be singers. I want to sing like this singer and that song. No. Make them aspire to be like Sheikh Khusari, Sheikh Ninshawi and the other qurra. Make them have a dream. I don't want to be a celebrity. I want to be the Imam of Haram one day. So when someone asks your 5-year-old child, what do you want to be when they grow up? They should say, I want to be the Imam of the Haram. That's how we do their tarbiyah. And then they will do it themselves and you will see. So we pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses all of our children and allows them to love the Qur'an. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us as parents to do what is needed in order to inculcate the love of the Qur'an in our children's hearts. Okay, barakallahu feekum. Wa sallallahu ala nabi al-kareem. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakumullah khairan to Sheikh Ziyad for that very, I'm sure you'll all agree, a very informative bayan. And it's not something that we can all listen to today and go away and remember it all. Okay, there was a lot of information in there and all of it was beneficial. This is why I just wanted to mention that the recordings have been made for a reason. Inshallah, these recordings will be available on YouTube. There's a channel by the name of aammedia Productions. If you go on that channel, these videos, Qari Sahib's recitation as well, will be on there in a few days. Please go back and listen to it, especially the talk as well, because there's so much information in there. There's something in there for everybody, right from the youngest child here to the eldest person here. There's something for all of us in there. So we should go back and listen to it, take notes and try and apply it into our lives. A couple of other announcements. This program today was arranged to support a madrasa in Bangladesh, and I mentioned this earlier. So we're supporting this madrasa due to its financial constraints. So there's a donation point at the back. Brothers are requested to take part in this as much as you can. Card payments are also available. I'm told, mashallah, today in the sister section, 50 plus sisters attended, which is more than any other program that's happened here. Mashallah, Masjid Aisha organizes many events, as we know. So this proves that there is a thirst, subhanAllah, there is a want. They want to understand, they want to learn. And you know, speaking of the podcast that the Sheikh mentioned as well, I myself listened to parts of it. I didn't listen to all of it. It's quite a long podcast, but it just went up a month ago, and within a month, Qari Yahya Ali's podcast got over 10,000 views on YouTube. Like, there are people who keenly interested and want to learn and want to understand these things. So brothers requested to, you know, look into these things and learn. There's so much to learn in there. So the sisters have arrived. The sisters are also requested to participate in this helping of the madrasa that we are supporting today. Please do pass the bucket around as well. And finally, for everybody here, food has been arranged, inshallah. So brothers are requested, once the program concludes, to head upstairs and food will be served to everybody. Jazakumullah khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.